You know, Scott, one of the things that I really love about your research and enjoy about you in general is that you are a guy who is not afraid to stand up in a storm and point his face directly into the wind and walk forward in that direction no matter what anybody else says. You're joining me from the Bigger Truth show today. People can follow Scott on X at Bigger Truth, and we're going to have a sponsor exclusive segment coming up, biggertruthmedia.com. People who follow Scott on Substack can join us for that. But Scott, you're going to be telling us about the Epstein hoax. And I got to be honest, when you first dropped that title on me, I was like, well, what is he talking about? How is Epstein a hoax? So fill us in on what you've been on to. This is a really detailed and well-articulated thread, I think, that you've been pulling on. It's good to see you back.
Thank you so much, Jason. I guess it's really a privilege to do this with you. I think your research as well is something that that I benefited from, and I think a lot of people have. And I'm very curious to see as I kind of lay out my thesis here. I welcome your challenge. So any questions or challenges, please do challenge. And your description there, standing with my face in the wind and in the storm, I got myself into a lot of trouble on doing that, but that's just how I'm wired. So thanks for.
Well, wait a
for
minute.
that.
Tell us a bit about that. What kind of trouble you mean? Because you called it an Epstein hoax, certain people immediately had kind of a negative response to
Well,
that?
it's just part of I'm not talking so much about this got me into a lot of trouble, but I generally get into a lot of trouble for that character trait.
Yes.
So
That's another part of the reason why I like you. But you're not saying that Epstein or the crimes that he's committed are a hoax. You're talking about the way in which this information has been presented to us and the expectations that are being sent. I really think it's about the list, right? They're telling us there's some kind of magical list of crimes that they're going to somehow expose. But we got a lot to talk about. So
yeah,
take us
so
where you're going.
absolutely, and you're really right on the right track as far as where I'm thinking. When Trump, about a week and a half ago, Trump posted on Truth Social, and he coined the term the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And when he said that, I was actually in that post. He's calling out people within MAGA who he said are not MAGA, and that just hit my sweet spot. That's exactly been the focus of the bulk of my research over the last year and a half, is this insurgency within MAGA that is pretending to be supportive of Trump, but is really running psychological operations and narratives that are designed to turn Trump's base against him. And that's exactly what the Epstein hoax was. And you're absolutely right. I'm not talking about, that he didn't commit crimes and that there aren't victims and, hundreds or even 1,000 or more victims, and that he's not a despicable person. And the same with Ghislaine Maxwell. I think that they absolutely are despicable people, and they're criminals. But and I don't think that that's what Trump was talking about when he said the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, especially in the context of what he wrote. It was, what he's talking about is this web of false expectations that could never be met, and that it was systematically implanted into the psyche, into the hearts and minds of really millions of Trump's followers over the last several years. This idea that the FBI has a list, a blackmail list that corresponds with video, that, blackmail video of all the global elites doing horrible crimes against children. Now, and I'm not even saying that that didn't happen, because it's very likely that he did get this blackmail. But what was incredibly unlikely from the start was that that the FBI actually had possession of it. And I don't believe that the FBI ever did have possession. I don't think that they ever would have had possession of it.
But let me ask you this, because I think the first problem that a lot of people had was, we've seen this, I think it was video, maybe it was photos, but when Epstein was first arrested, there was this kind of like excursion to his island where somebody had a drone flying and the FBI was in there pulling out boxes of stuff. Everybody saw Kash Patel go on Joe Rogan and Dan Bongino. I mean, it looked like hostage videos of those two guys saying there is no list, there is no there. I think this really set people up to be. Trump handled it kind of badly, in my opinion, how he said that. It's like the optics are bad because everybody feels like there is some kind of evidence that the FBI has, and him not talking about it or giving it to us, it does kind of make him seem like he's covering something up, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I agree that he definitely did not handle that in the moment as well as he could have. And I think the same thing with Pam Bondi. I think she made some mistakes. I also think that I think that Trump is one of the few people, certainly one of the few presidents, if not the only president that we've had in the last a very long time, that actually is who he says he is. I believe that about Trump. I think that he has sincere motives and intentions. And I also think that that's the case with Pam Bondi. I think that she is sincerely trying to to apply the law and to fulfill her to do her job as the Attorney General of the United States as well as she can. Now, there is nobody that because I really track what I call the Flynn Network a lot, and the Flynn Network is not people who are only directly tied to Flynn. It is a network. It includes people like Jack Posobiec, Steve Bannon, um, Mike Cernovich. It's this large. It's some people call it conservative Inc. There's connections with what was called MAGA 3X back in 2017, 2016, 2017. There's it's a large network of influencers who ultimately, in my view, whether they know it or not, are tied to the intelligence community and are spreading narratives. And you can see it on X, and I'm sure you've noticed it. Just about everybody's noticed it when the same narrative just spontaneously appears and is promoted using the same language, the same words, all across conservative X.
But
And
let me pause you for a second because you've just said something important that I did not know about, but it's another one of these things that you say that's sort of instantly verified. So MAGA 3X, I never heard of until you just said it right now. But the first thing that comes up is deplorable. And the funny thing is, when I first started Crowdsource the Truth, I was coming from the world. I was running a company called 21st Century 3D before this, and I was working on Spider-Man movies and things like that, building my 3D cameras. So I went to this deplorable because I figured, well, I want to get into this independent news world. I've got to network and meet people, and here's something pro-Trump happening. Let me go there. That is where I met Jack Posobiec. He was like
wow.
the MC of the thing or something like that. I was talking to his very attractive now wife, and he came over right away. It was just his girlfriend at that time, and introduced himself. And I did not know about this MAGA 3X. But you see, again, what you're saying rings true because I'm not just like sitting here looking at Twitter, and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing either. You and I have both been thrust headlong into this world where we've interacted with these people. We've been kind of crossed by these people. You saw my interaction with Jack Posobiec outside the Madison Square Garden rally for Trump. Why is Trump so close to these people? He endorsed Jack Posobiec's book. Kash Patel, I think, is all in this mix. Dan Bongino certainly is. What's going on there, Scott?
The only explanation that I have that makes any sense to me, and I could be wrong, but the only explanation that makes sense to me is that Trump sees a lot of it. I think he gives people the benefit of the doubt. I think that Trump is more focused on getting results than he is on what people have done wrong or their associations with each other. I don't think that he fully understands that what this is it's an influence operation. This is a military intelligence operation. This is the deep state. And I don't think he fully understands that this is an insurgency because he hears them say things that he likes. And that's and I think that that's the reason why he just this week he had Roger Stone in the Oval Office. And it was because Roger Stone at the Turning Point event a week and a half ago in Tampa, I'm certain that Trump watched most of that event because he posted that True Social post during that event. And he was talking about these people, and Charlie Kirk and all these people were just bashing on Trump the whole time and bashing on Pam Bondi. And I think he saw that and he was just shocked because he's looking at the things that he's focused on, which is the one big beautiful bill, which really in one bill encapsulates all of his campaign promises in one bill that he's been working on for a year and a half, even during the campaign, and with several Congress people, and he's looking at, like, after the fifth month of his presidency, we're running a federal surplus, which is just mind blowing, unbelievable.
That
Nobody
is
even
amazing.
talks about
Yeah.
that, and so I mean he is having racking up some absolutely extraordinary wins, and we're going to see, because of what he's already accomplished, we haven't even begun to see a lot of the results of this, because next year the average we see the biggest middle class tax cuts in American history, as far as I know. The average middle class family is going to see $10,000 less in taxes next year than this year. And and that's gonna have a huge uplifting effect on our general economy. But even more than that, what he's doing with the tariffs is really encouraging and inspiring and motivating the construction of new factories, and moving factories here to the United States from overseas. We're going to see, and then removing the illegal immigrants is going to create
That
even
is
more,
huge.
even
That's huge.
it's going to make us safer. It's going to improve our economy. It's going to remove a major drain from our economy and from our schools and from healthcare and everything else.
No,
It's
I
going to
see
affect our
that
job
right here
market.
in New York because the streets were just packed. I mean, literally packed,
Really.
teeming with people who should not have been here. And that problem has been alleviated. I don't mean to interrupt you were saying there, but I
Sure.
want to take you back to, again, something important that you just said, because I did review your episode 74, the Epstein hoax and the Treason hoax, which I think
Yeah.
people should really check out. People should go to biggertruthmedia.com and watch that video, because you explain how this is like a military psyop technique
Right.
with the expectations getting elevated, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the Epstein hoax really is this web of false expectations. The hope, it was the incitement of a hope in something that the people that were in charge of this, that were designing and promoting these narratives on the highest level, they knew the psychological impact that that would have. I believe that this was the seed of, they wanted to create a new TDS within MAGA, Trump derangement syndrome within MAGA. And the Epstein hoax is a big part of that. And then just 1 week later, we have Tulsi Gabbard coming out and pushing and releasing this information that is very, it's damning, what Obama did, and it's proving Obama's involvement in deceiving the American public. It's terrible, and it probably would have been criminal had it been discovered 5 years ago, within the statute of limitations.
But isn't it, if it's a conspiracy and ongoing, isn't it? It always seems like they have some way of extending the statute of limitations if that's what they want to do. You know, they got Trump 20 years after the fact.
Right. And
But I
I
agree
think
with
we've
you. It's
seen,
going to be an uphill battle. They're going to say,
yeah,
oh, Trump just got presidential immunity. And it's, this is what Obama thought. He thought in his bones that the Russians were doing something. So he needed, even if he's wrong, you can't put a guy on trial for the death penalty for being wrong, particularly not if he's the president. You're
right.
right. It is quite a challenge. You
And
know,
Obama, Obama's got presidential immunity, and
just like
the
Trump
Supreme
does.
Court just decided that last year in favor of Trump, and what they decided in favor of Trump applies to Obama as well. So
Yeah.
I don't see Obama, and what he was doing was as president. And so unless they can get a smoking gun, like multiple witnesses, documentation, emails, text messages, it's not going to happen, because they build plausible deniability into everything that they do. But unless they can find that after 2020, then Obama is, what he did was while he was president, and that he'll have presidential executive immunity. So
But isn't it true, Scott, that there's a lot of people around Obama, Norm Eisen and Andrew Weissman, and people who are his kind of, apparatchiks who could be prosecuted? I certainly for one would like to see that for Obama's henchmen to, I mean, Obama's one guy. I'm not saying let him off the hook, but I agree with you. It's going to be very difficult to do and would burn up a lot of political capital and maybe even create the same kind of sentiment. You know, a lot of people feel like Trump won in 2024 because middle of the road people were like, oh, they're prosecuting this guy and everything, and we might have a similar effect on Democrats if they do that to Obama. But if they got Andrew Weissman, if they got Norm Eisen, if they got Ben Wittes, the head of the Lawfare Institute, and started cracking down on these nonprofits that are decentralizing the intelligence agencies, can they do that?
Well, I'd love to see it too. I would absolutely love to see it. But in order to do that, you've got to have a crime. You've got to have evidence that they actually committed the crime that points to them directly, and not just it was these guys, so we're going to take this one and we're going to prosecute him or her. I mean, it's got to implicate them directly beyond a reasonable doubt that a jury of their peers is going to convict them on. And a huge part of the problem is that all of this was done in Washington, D.C.
Right.
The crimes were committed there. There's talk. Greg Jarrett put out what I think was a fantasy piece about laying this out as a grand conspiracy that would include supposed crimes, alleged crimes that were committed against Trump when he was living in Florida. Therefore, they would be able to prosecute this in Florida. I think that's pure fantasy, because especially if you're talking about the people at the head of the snake, that they never left Washington, D.C. as they were doing these things. They weren't actually there with the FBI during the Mar-a-Lago raid, for example. So, it's just, it becomes, it's more than an uphill battle. I just don't, the odds that they're going to be able to try this anywhere other than DC are slim to none, realistically. And Obama's not going to go to jail. All of the memes, Flynn was talking day before yesterday. He was on the Benny Johnson show, and he's just screaming like he always does with his eyebrows bobbing up and down, and talking about how he woke up this morning hoping that there were going to be arrests this morning, and Obama needs to be arrested immediately, and he needs to be, perp walked, and and all. It's not going to happen. I mean, and they're setting up another hoax in the sense of expectations that people are extremely emotional about right now. People within MAGA are extremely emotional about this. And you look at treason. And the reason why I call this the treason hoax is because treason itself is a crime that is very clearly described in the Constitution. It's one of the few crimes that's actually clearly defined by our Constitution, Articles 3, Section 3. And the two main features of it is that, one, it's an act of war against this country, or it's aiding an enemy in war against this country. And it needs to be substantiated by two or more witnesses or a confession. And so the obstacle here, in order to have treason, according to the constitutional definition of treason, is we have to be at war, and it has to be, the enemy of this country. And so they're not going to be able to define the deep state as the enemy of this country. It's just, I don't see how that's going to happen legally. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it.
No, this is a good point.
It's just not realistic.
It's a good point that you've raised, because somebody can accuse somebody of being, a murderous wretch, and that is kind of a colorfully decorative way to describe a crazy person. It's very different than meeting the elements of first-degree murder, basically, is what you're saying. So just back to Epstein for a second, because obviously, there's going to be people, if you're Obama and the people who are being implicated here by Tulsi Gabbard, you're going to get some kind of inkling that this is happening as far as releasing all this stuff. And by the way, it wasn't a secret. I mean, they knew that this material was there and that Trump and his people were looking to release it. So do you think, and again, it's not to say everybody is speculating like, oh, if they, altered the Epstein files, or why didn't they alter these other files? And if they had the Epstein files in the last presidential, term, why didn't they release them then? You're really getting more into the deeper, really psychological aspects of this. One of the key players in this Flynn army is, one of our mutually favorite guys, this asshole Ivan Raiklin. And I'm just seeing this article here for the first time. The Atlantic, not that I trust the Atlantic, it's actually, I think, a pretty untrustworthy thing, but it's interesting that it's got this story here about Trump's Secretary of Retribution. Are you familiar with this guy, Shane Harris?
Yeah, absolutely. He was with the Daily Beast and in 2016, then he was with the Wall Street Journal after that.
Right.
He's one of these intelligence community, like his sources are the intelligence community. So, his sources are the deep state.
Not only that, he was directly involved in this Peter Smith hoax, we could call it, where, see, this is directly tied to exactly what we're talking about. This was another thing that was really important to my entree into this world of journalism. This article here from June 29th, Scop operatives sought Clinton emails from hackers, implied a connection to Flynn. See, what's important about this is, and we are getting important information from Tulsi Gabbard. I agree largely with everything that you're saying. It does seem like a nearly impossible feat to put Obama on trial and certainly to convict him. But she's telling us that they had this big meeting on December 8th where the intelligence community said, yeah, we looked into all this and it doesn't seem like Russia actually did anything. In fact, they thought Hillary was going to win and getting ready to release all this information about her being on drugs and everything after she won. And then on the 9th, the 9th of December, 2016, Obama starts to mobilize the intelligence community under him, saying, no, I don't like this assessment, come up with a new assessment that says that they helped Trump. And I believe that Shane Harris was involved in that. This whole thing that he's talking about with Peter Smith that you and I have discussed in the past, Peter Smith was on a mission to obtain what I believe were fake emails, 33,000. This is where this number of 33,000 emails came from. And also Flynn, anytime he talks about his military career, he doesn't say 3 decades. He doesn't say almost 35 years. He says 33 years in the military. Now, I don't know where that number comes from. I know you are a devout Christian, and everybody tells me that Christ was killed at the age of 33. Perhaps that is where the significance of that number comes from. I'm looking at it simply as a steganographic marker, sort of a hidden code that's used in plain sight. 33,000 emails. This guy's talking about 33 years in the military. But the point is, these were fake emails that they were attempting to get onto Charles Ortel. And then the FBI in December of 2018 comes and investigates Charles Ortel. Now, the plan had already gone afoul, but I believe what they intended to have happen was for Charles to have received these emails, and then they would have said, ooh, this is a crime that you have these emails. This was espionage. We're going to stick you in jail. Why don't you sign a plea deal and say that you were working at the behest of Trump with these Russians? You're a Trump agent, and then we'll use your testimony to jam up Trump. So it's interesting to see that Shane Harris, he wrote this story about the emails, and he's also now writing stories about Ivan Raiklin, who, again, they're trying to connect him to Trump. He's not Trump's secretary of anything.
I have another Shane Harris story from around that same time that is significant, which is so, and what you're talking about there, it was what the official predicate for Crossfire Hurricane, which was the investigation into Trump's Russia connections. The official predicate for that, what they said that was the reason, was George Papadopoulos being propositioned by Joseph Mifsud to it was an offer to purchase those emails from Russian hackers via Mifsud. Now, I actually I've had some indirect contact with Mifsud's attorney, and I do not believe that is that story is accurate at all. I think it was actually kind of the other way around, but that's kind of beside the point. That what they're saying is that it was securing those emails was the predicate for that. And
well, hang on a second. This is big. This is big. We're just about out of time here, but this is what I want to talk about, and I want to go over this in depth. So people are going to join us now on biggertruthmedia.com. We're going to have our sponsor exclusive segment, and this is huge. We're going to be able to get into detail on all of this. People can also see it on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com. or patreon.com. Also, people who subscribe to me on X at JG_CSTT will get that after the show. If you haven't already followed, Scott, are you able to get subscribers on X, Scott?
No, I'm not yet. They have me shadow banned pretty heavily.
That. Right.
Yep.
People can still follow you there at Bigger Truth, and Scott is making all kinds of great posts. You can get right to his Substack link right there, biggertruthmedia.com. Don't go anywhere, anybody. We've got a lot to discuss, these details about Mifsud and so much more, about Epstein and Obama and all this.